Hey there, this is a little bit of an unusual video. This is a replay of a webinar I did with We Wild Women. It was the first time I shared publicly the gas leak explosion I went through, kind of testing the waters of if I could say it without losing my mind, and then also sharing my Chew-Witzen point system, which is this methodology for building habits. Very nerdy, and I felt, frankly, really a little bit self-conscious about sharing it because I thought, like, this is me at my weirdest, and I don't know if anyone would actually do this. To come and find out, after the webinar, I had all these super cool DMs in my Instagram of people that said they love it, they have an inner competitive spirit too, and they're totally see themselves using it and building it out. And furthermore, this gal I used to work with way back in the day at the engineering firm, she said, hey, you had actually talked about this point system in an email once that I got from you, and it has totally changed my life, and I've been using it for the last 4 months, and I got 2 of my friends to do it. So that's sick. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate it. And I see us probably, it'd be cool if I could get all the girls together and talking about how they've deployed the point system and it's been really helping them. But you're probably wondering, what is that thing? I'm not going to give it away. You can go listen to the rest of this presentation and catch the scoop on how that went down. Okay, without any further ado, let's hit it.
So we are recording, and I want to welcome you all to the March Masterclass of 2022 of the secret habit building system every entrepreneur needs. We have the incredible Meredith, and I forget how we connected, but you know, when you meet these people online, it's kind of like instant, like, this is it. We're friends for life. Mm-hmm. It was like, you know, my husband, and then I don't know, Instagram. I don't even know how we connected.
Oh, I was binging actually your podcast, crossing up the country on a drive. And I was like, in a crisis, life is changing. And I just shot you a DM being like, you have inspired me to change my life.
Oh, wow.
And that's the nicest comment. And then here we are, we've been collaborating since.
Yeah, I love it. Meredith has an incredible story of just her, and I'll do the quick intro about her business. I'm going to let her share it, but it's kind of like the failing to riches story. And why I thought it was important to have her as a guest, because she showed me one day this like nerdy habit building system that was like a spreadsheet and all this stuff. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. I need you to teach people this. And it doesn't really have that much to do with the business that she's in, but everything to do with the success she's had in growing this business. So a quick intro. Meredith Noble is an entrepreneur, community leader, and outdoor adventuress. She grew up in Wyoming as a 5th-generation cattle rancher. Her upbringing shaped her values of taking responsibility, making each move count, and working hard. She is now in Alaska, where she co-founded Learn Grant Writing, an online professional development program that helps women build wildly fulfilling careers as grant writers. She also has a book that's called How to Write a Grant to Become a Grant Writing Unicorn, and is a #1 bestseller for nonprofit fundraising and grants. And she's just awesome. So welcome, Meredith.
All right, right on. Let's roll. All right, we're running through the Chew-Witzen method. If you're wondering, how do I pronounce that word? I'll describe it in a moment. It's a habit building system I built for myself as a very self-critical female entrepreneur that you might find useful yourself. So I don't know about you, but this all started back when I was first moved to Alaska. I was getting ready to train for a huge bike race. And I realized that every day I'd get to the end of the day and I was beating myself up. I didn't exercise enough. I didn't make enough progress on my non-work to-do list. And I just felt like I was always beating myself up every day, because we have, as entrepreneurs, high standards for ourselves, for our partner, for our kids, for everybody. And we have these very bold ambitions. And so you combine those two things, and I noticed I'm actually having a lot of hurtful self-talk. And so when I moved here, I decided to go from having never ridden a bike over 15 miles with lots of gummy bear snack breaks to doing 88 miles in a race. And I realized something had to shift in how I trained, because some days a rest day is just as valuable as a training day, right? And I realized that I needed a system to stop beating myself up on a daily basis and instead track trends over the long term towards health. So that was the aha, realizing that all days are not meant to be equal, especially for women. A bad day doesn't matter. If I want to go out and drink and have appetizers and have a good time with my girlfriends and stay up late on all the things, I can do that. And that's amazing. What matters is that I'm not doing that every day of the week, right? And that the trend line of good behavior is increasing over time, because that is how I build health over time. So I stopped beating myself up to be better and realized I just need a system that's actually more objective, instead of me being, wait, did I get my objective and subjective mixed up? But I just need something that I can measure over time. Okay, so that led to the Chew-Witzen method. I'll describe where the word came from in a moment, but that is how you pronounce it. It's a Koyukon Athabascan Alaska Native word. It is a gentle, keyword habit building system to stop being overly self-critical and instead build very sustainable behaviors that allow you to feel healthy and happy. So this is how it works. Ready? This is the nerdy part. Cooked this up on my own. Okay, so I have a checklist of habits. It's laminated. And in it, you'll see I have these little squares of all these habits that I'm trying to build over time. So you can read them here. It's like getting 8 hours of sleep, in bed by 10:30. Little things even like didn't use disposable plastics, didn't take anything personally. Let's see, I accomplished my 3 priorities. I did some creative writing, right? No dairy that day, because I'm trying to clean up my diet, right? So these are all the things that I'm working on habit-wise. But what you'll notice is that not every day is the same. Like, so in fitness, walking 3 miles or taking a rest day when needed is something I can get a point for versus just getting a point for doing cardio or weightlifting that day, right? So I laminate it so I can mark off with a little marker every morning, what did I do the day prior? And then I get a number at the bottom of that. Okay, so then I write in a half-page journal entry. This is what it looks like. Here's a screenshot. So it has the date, how many hours of sleep did I get? What was the quality of my sleep? How does my body feel? Do I have aches? Do I feel tired? Just a check-in. What food did I eat the day prior? Exercise. What am I thankful for? My priority for the day, 1 priority, and my intention. So sometimes I've tracked different things. Like when I was racing, I used to actually track my heart rate. I would do a little heart rate check in the morning and see how I was recovering. Whatever you want. And I used to try to track towards getting to 10 pull-ups. So I would track how many pull-ups did I do the day before. You can track whatever you want. It doesn't matter. But these were the activities that, or the metrics that I decided to track. And I've been doing this system since 2018. So I have a lot of interesting data. And sometimes when I'm trying to reflect on, going into a doctor appointment, I know they're going to ask me, well, when did that symptom start? I wouldn't remember, but I can go back into my little book and I can see when things started or stopped. Then let's see, you see that number says 21 in the lower right-hand corner. That's where I write in, okay, how many points did I get that day in my little laminated sheet? Oops. Okay, so what I'm doing is tracking the trend line over time. I don't always put this in a Google spreadsheet. This is actually kind of an old version. Now I just kind of hand chart it, but I just want to see a gentle increase. So just gently over time, I'm getting a little bit healthier, and then I can swap out old habits that I'm definitely locked in on and add new ones. So if the trend line declines, that's okay, that happens, but it's my warning indicator. I noticed that if I catch that it's going down and take course corrective action, I can get it back on a trend line before I get sick or burnout. So this is what that looks like manually. I literally just chart the points. It works out perfectly that a journal has 30 lines, right? And just add those data points. And you'll see that they're all over the place. Some days are high, some days are low. It's okay. I just want to know over time, what direction is it going? And yes, Renee is calling me out on how nerdy this is. You all can tell me how nerdy it is too. I've never told anyone about this system. So please do chat in the chat box because it keeps me entertained too. Okay, here's the nerdy version when it actually gets charted. So then I can see what is the direction of the trend line, right? Month 1 was climbing, but then month 2, or 3 was declining, and look at those tanked days that really dropped things, right? So I have included all the links to how you can build this and have your own trend lines tracked if you want. It's very easy. I usually just go in once a month and do it, but it's a nice way to just get out of your own head if you're being self-critical and look at the bigger picture, because that's what matters. It's health over time, not health in this specific day or week, right? Okay, so why does it work? It's the big picture, gets us thinking about habit building over time, not just trying to stop eating the sugar and cookies right now. The trend line is what matters. It takes the pressure off having a perfect day. We just care over time. And also, this is why it works for me specifically. Like, how do you stick with a system? This brings out my inner competitive. And I'm not competing with anyone but myself. So I'll find that if I tanked and looked at my social media today and I'm feeling kind of bad about that, I'm going to really pay attention to trying to get the other points. Like, I got to get my butt into bed at 10:30. I need to floss. I didn't want to, but I'm going to do it. Make sure I'm washing my face, like all these things that sometimes I don't really want to do, but it brings out my inner competitive to get my own points, right? Okay, so this is then the other thing that was super eye-opening. I didn't know going into this. I noticed that it's really important to identify your keystone habit. So the keystone is that rock at the very top of an archway that holds it all together. And what I noticed is that there's one habit that, if achieved, allows me to achieve like 6 other habits. So good ROI if I can get into bed by 10:30, right? Which seems late, but in Alaska, where sometimes we have the midnight sun, 10:30 can actually be quite hard in the summer. If I get into bed by 10:30, I don't eat junk food, I don't get on social media, I wake up feeling rested, I read a book, right? Like, all of these amazing things happen if I do one habit. So that's what's interesting is that you don't always know what that habit is until you're doing the system and discover it. So I'm curious if anyone in the chat box actually has a theory on what their keystone habit is, right? Maybe it's like having a morning routine, whatever. But this has been a really, really insightful piece of the data. CrossFit. Yeah. So Renee's keystone habit is CrossFit. That's super sweet. That makes sense. That tracks for you. Yeah. Okay. So why the name? So I teach people how to be grant writers, how to build a career in grant writing. I was doing a workshop a couple of weeks ago for this interior of Alaska, where we have a lot of tribes in that area that they have worked with them for years and years and years. And they've really taken me in a really warm and welcome way. And so I was done teaching them what I was going to teach them about grant writing. And we ended up just doing an exchange of knowledge on basically Koyukon, Athabascan, Dena'ina, all these different regions of Alaska have their own dialects, and they were teaching me several of the words. I told them about this point system, just kind of having a casual conversation, and one of them said, Chew-Witzen. I said, what does that mean? And she said, it's true love. And that was the word she used because she said self-care, habit building is true love, right? Self-care is true love. And so I thought that was so cool. I'd been always looking for a way better name. And that was what we landed on. So it's no longer called just the point system. It's now called the Chew-Witzen point system. Hannah, awesome. So your keystone habit is a morning run. I really wish that could be my morning habit. A lot of snow here. Okay. So you're probably wondering, how can you take this little system and maybe spin it up and make it your own? So the first thing is, I want you to write out the habits on a piece of paper first, because for the first week, you're going to be thinking of habits as you go through the week that you won't think of in one sitting. So there's no sense in doing it at one time and laminating it and then realize you're not really happy with the habits you selected. So writing them out and kind of test driving them is valuable. Then we can create the checklist. I'll give you that document, customize it yourself. And I'm telling you, one of the cheapest pleasures in life is laminating. I think it is so fun. I'm starting to laminate a lot of stuff now, like even my morning routine, you name it, there's going to be laminated pieces of paper everywhere, because it's just a nice way to carry things around. I even laminated my COVID card. So if you then we can go laminate it. I mean, if you don't have it, I think probably your kids at school have one. And then you can just use a dry erase marker to casually mark off those points every day. I'm curious, if you think this is nuts and you would not use a system like this, you're not hurting my feelings. It's weird, but I am curious in the chat box if anyone could see themselves using something like this, or even unmuting yourself, because we're a pretty small group. Yeah, Allie's like, absolutely. Hannah would 100%. Cool. I'm so glad there's other nerds out there. Nerds together.
I would totally do this. And I'm actually, it's going to be an Amazon Canada link. But if you go to Amazon or even a local dollar store, they actually have self-laminating sheets. So I'm going to put this in the chat, but essentially what you do is you just lay down your piece of paper and then you fold the plastic and it laminates this, because I used to do this all the time with my kids' chores.
Yes, exactly. It's like infinite possibilities. Like give it for a kid's morning routine to get on the bus. No yelling. Check your checklist.
Okay, so I want to interject really quickly though. Why, because before I forget this, why laminate a physical thing as opposed to having something digital?
I know, such a good question. And I see that Carissa had mentioned that, yeah, she might want to make it digital. I think it's this. I noticed that if I'm on my device too early in the morning, it throws my ability to stick with a good, healthy, clean morning routine. If I get on my phone to check items, there's a good chance I'm going to get sidetracked and I'm not going to complete the full morning routine. And so I found that one of the most important things I've had to work really hard. Building habits and routines is very hard for me. I like to just do whatever I want, free bird. So this system allows me to, wake up, make my tea, do 2 sun salutations, sit down, do the journal, think, set my intention, set my priority, then roll into the day. So yeah, there's probably a case for it to be digital. I think maybe like to track the trend lines automatically would be nice. But
yeah, we can add that after.
Yeah, I kind of like that it's old school, I guess.
And it coincides with this book I'm reading now, which everyone needs to put this on their list of a million books that are being suggested, but it's called Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Yes.
And he talks about how some of the world's greatest, like the psychologists, inventors, writers, make sure that they don't have any distractions in their day.
Yeah.
And yeah, the book is so this makes sense to me, and not having it digital, because yes, the notifications happen. And even today I noticed I was like trying to prep my Monday's podcast. And I was like, I just got to go on Instagram to get her link to put in the show notes.
And then
35 minutes later, I was like, whoa,
what did I come here for? Right.
Yeah. Okay. Carry on.
Sweet. We're carrying on. But I'm actually very impressed that there's so many people in the chat that actually think you would do this. So there you go. Cool. Maybe we're on to something. Okay, and the Deep Work book, I definitely have a point about that in a second that I'm going to be adding to. Okay, so yeah, the morning routine, this has been the same thing where like it takes 5 minutes to add it into your day. And I do think there's so many other applications for laminating checklists. And I was just talking about this with Tobias, who's on the phone as well, about how we essentially have checklists. He's a pilot, right? Flies planes. Like you have a lot of checklists before you take off, so you don't like have something catastrophic and crash. Our medical system has a checklist even when they just walk in, right? Very basic. Our brains can only handle so many moving parts. So the more we can streamline the repetitive pieces, we save our brain capacity for the deeper work. So that's like the bigger picture why to this, is that you actually are way more effective if we build more checklists and routines into our lives. Okay. So that leads to basically the struggle is real on routines, right? Like progress is better than perfection. I probably do the point system in all reality 4 to 5 days a week. I'm not doing it every day of the week. So it's okay if you're not doing it every day. Obviously I'm moving towards that, but sometimes I just don't. And I do think that allowing the day to be bananas is just reality. But if we can really anchor ourselves into a morning and nighttime routine, we're going to see really big results. And I'm working on this. I guess I already made this point on checklists, but this is where I had the aha on that. Has anyone read this book, The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande? Insanely interesting book. Yeah, not yet, Renee. Totally recommend it. But this is where that kind of aha came from. Actually, where the checklist originally came from too is my little sister is a Nordic ski racer. She's 10 years younger than I. She had a packing list because she would go, she was in high school at the time. Heck, she was middle school when I first saw her do this. She was young. She used tape. She taped with clear tape her checklist for packing for Nordic ski trips, hat, long johns, ski boots, right? And she started that system. And I was so inspired by it that I thought, boy, that could definitely get used elsewhere. Okay, so it's useful to have, this is a habit building system for you as an individual so that you show up to work and life in your best form. But what I have found is that it also really translates well to business. So I'm curious in the chat box, who here has standard operating procedures and checklists in their business? Like these are documents that exist today and you operate out of them. Of course, Renee does. So besides Renee, Jacqueline does. Awesome. Sweet. Curious if anyone else does, or maybe like wants to, like know you want to put some in, but you're not quite sure how to start. Okay. I will be honest, yeah, totally. So actually the concept of building out an SOP playbook, I did get from Renee's husband, Dan. We were in his early SaaS Accelerator program and he taught this and it was like, wow, that's genius. An SOP playbook. Cool. So that was where it all started and we've riffed on it since. So here's how we apply it to work. We have a weekly sync. Looks like I had a little bit of a typo there, didn't complete the concept. So we'll ignore that slide, but I'm going to show you how it works. There it is. I must have just not done that correctly. Okay, so there's two things I want to show you. The weekly sync is how we streamline meetings with a checklist type routine. And then here's our SOP playbook. So essentially it's a Google Sheet. You can see on the left-hand side, there's these hyperlinks that links out to the procedure. So YouTube, for instance, is like a 10-page procedure. It actually involves 3 or 4 different people to put a freaking YouTube video out, right? Consistently. So it's been super helpful to have these documents that just guide us through the steps so we don't have to go remember it every time. We're not going to talk about the playbook, but I did want to show you all the weekly agenda. And in fact, what do we think if we just went and saw it? Let's go look at it. Okay, so here's not what I want to show you, but it is, let's see, weekly team meeting. Can everyone see the screen without, do I need to zoom in? Probably a little bit. Okay, let me back up real quick and explain. 1 year ago, 1 year and a couple months ago, I was so out of energy and ideas on how to build our business, teaching others how to write grants through an online course. I was this close to giving up and I had 6 weeks of money left in the bank. And I just had Alex, my co-founder, she had joined only a couple months before. It felt like utter failure to have someone given up their well-paying job to come work for my scrappy little startup. And we were failing epically. In the month of December alone, we lost $20,000. Like it was bad. So when you hit rock bottom, I really don't know if Alex hadn't brought me an idea on how to rebuild and give us a new approach to creating a sustainable offer. I don't know if we would even have what we have today, but we relaunched basically in January of 2021 and went from, $0 to 66,000 in monthly recurring revenue. I mean, it's a huge turnaround. We went from Alex and I as the only 2 poorly paid full-time employees to we just hired our 3rd employee and we have 9 part-time people between coaches and other support. So that's all happened in a year and a quarter. And I can tell you that it's been super, like it has its times where you build out a system, you grow, and then you have to break your system because you're growing so quickly it doesn't work anymore, right? And so this weekly agenda, getting out of just a running Google Doc and moving it into Asana, was Alex's idea in February. So it's not that old of a system to just get us all on the same page because everyone's all over the country. And it has been absolutely transformative, not only for reducing mistakes, but just feeling way more grounded and connected and strengthening of the culture. So if you're a one-woman shop right now, know that even when you just bring on like your first VA or whatever, like this is the type of system that makes a huge difference in your life. So even though this might look like, oh, I'm not big enough to have something like that, I wish we'd started this even just when it was just Alex and I. So here's how it works. You have roles. So who's the facilitator, who keeps time, and the action grabber. The action grabber is, hey, we should do that. And they add it at the bottom. We have, what is the meeting purpose? We defined what success is, right? So success is everyone knows the plan for the week. We start and end on time. You feel valued, right? Stuff like that. Then we have weekly expectations, right? So this is sort of like, this is what you're supposed to do rolling into this meeting, right? So we do a 5-minute segue to good news. So it's P is for personal, B is for business. So everyone adds this ahead of time, and we add like, what was our personal win? What was our business win? It's really a nice way to just know the whole person. Then we have our 5-minute weekly priorities. So I'll pull up Alexis, for instance. So she, last week, and we always do 3. So I don't know how she had 4 here, but last week it was like, there's 3 things that you're trying to accomplish in the week. And then this week, what are those 3? And then what is the deep work project, which I'll describe in a moment. So this is what we all do. And this gives me a chance to make sure everyone's on the same page and working on the right activities. So last week I worked on an SOP for the new hire and a webinar. This week, content with Alex, because National Unicorn Day is coming up. And then here's my deep work, which is today is deep work day, and what that project will be. So really, really transformative. Here's kind of headlines like, hey, Alex and Meredith, we were driving from Anchorage to Valdez today, so we're out of pocket. So you get an idea that this is a way to communicate, literally, even if it's only one person. Tobias is on the phone right now, and we've been doing this just even to communicate together as like 2 people, right? Just making sure we're on the same page about life and the week. IDS is like, hey, is there something that needs resolved? So you can put that here. And then adding in here, you know, who, what, one needs done. And then we conclude with rating the meeting, which at first I was very skeptical about doing this. I thought that could be a little weird, but it actually has been awesome. We went from having 3s to now having 4s moving into 5s. So the quality of the meeting has increased exponentially by knowing we're going to score ourselves and staying on track. So with that blither intact, chat box, would you see yourself, do you use Asana or a project management tool for one? Yeah, so Jacqueline has used Asana in the past, enjoyed it, definitely. Yeah, and we have figured out, it is a cool tool. It takes a little bit getting used to. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of resistant to it, but now that we use it, it's absolutely game changing. Plus, a unicorn shoots across the screen when you complete a task. So obviously I am a lifetime customer so long as that feature stays. Becca, she's using Asana and trying to build it out better and be more consistent with your habit systems. Yeah, totally. Especially because Becca just landed. Is this Becca Steron or Steron? I don't know how you pronounce your last name. Because yeah, she just landed a bunch of client work. So it makes sense you're gonna have to have this. And Hannah, I really appreciate this. In my solo business, will this be helpful? And the answer is yes. Yes, I actually have a personal board even just to track my own life, right? Like here it is, our personal big 3. Just, this is where we're, you know, I guess I could just add it. Where is it? Personal projects. So literally this is just my dumping board where I'm tracking things that need to be done, right? And it's just as a really nice way to manage your own mind and brain and everything that's going on. And then because you're going to be growing, someone's going to be helping you in some capacity eventually. And so then you already have a routine in place to bring them on. So let's keep boogieing. Now, do we have a perfectly run company? And am I perfect at habit building? And do I have an abundance of energy all the time? No. So I just want to be real about this, because I think when I present our systems, it's like, oh my gosh, she just must be a really special person in the way that she operates. I could never do that, whatever. Like, no one is messier or struggles with building habits and routines more than I do. So just want to emphasize that all of this has been a process to build and optimize over time. This is not how it looked right away, but the good news is you can skip through the messy phases and implement the thing that I think is the optimal result, and save yourself a little time. So going back to what Renee was talking about with deep work, I also haven't actually read the book, but I am going to be picking it up soon. So I was listening to this podcast, this one specifically right here by Ezra Klein Show, and it changed my life because of a couple of things. He made a couple points about how we essentially all work a second unpaid shift. It's like we all actually have lives, a full-time job, and actually a second job we're not paid for. And that second job is working in the weekends, the mornings, nighttime, because we need something quiet to get deep work done. And we're not getting any of that done Monday through Friday because we have meetings, our Slack channel is blowing up, we have phone calls, we're not able to get into that deep work state of mind. It's absolutely chaos and it's killing us. And I find that all of these little habits, like not having notifications on your phone, it's not enough. the way we work has to radically change. And the other analogy that really stuck out with me with Cal was talking about Henry Ford and the assembly line. We all think that he just made this magical leap from everyone building an entire car by themselves to an assembly line as if that was a linear hop. And it wasn't. They tried a ton of different experiments. There was resistance to change. It cost a lot of money. It took a lot of time before getting to an optimal result. I believe the way we work and live is at an inflection point where we have to radically rethink how we function, like Henry Ford did. I believe the only thing I actually have control over is myself and how my business is run. So I am using my business as a vehicle for change, experimenting with ways that we can change culture and all have such a better life and not be burning out. So I was working on a blog post. This is like literally a screenshot. This is how messy it is when I write, because I don't write often. And it was, we can't keep working like this, thoughts on new ways of living. And I was just blithering like, this is not working. Something has to change. Part of my newly improved deep chill self was doing this on a Sunday morning, having a nice cup of tea, really easy. But I was hearing a whistle outside. And if there's anything I'd learned from the week before, it was that you don't ignore something that seems out of the ordinary, because I had been ignoring that the big, our snowplow bobcat skid steer barely started for like months, just would barely turn over. And instead of investigating why it would do that, I just let it barely turn over and curse and kick it. And as a result, it failed, completely blew up when we got literally 5 feet of snow in a week. I was getting snowed in alive, and I'm not actually kidding. I actually was claustrophobic as heck. 4 inches of snow fell in an hour-and-a-half coaching call. I had to cancel everything that week because all I was doing was plowing and shoveling. And then I freaking blew the skid steer up. And it cost $1,200 to like get it fixed, try to figure out what it is, negotiate with neighbors to try to come help me dig out, right? And so I learned from that, don't ignore things, take care of them right away. So fast forward to walking over, you can see my little footprints, that's up the deck into the other tiny house where I was hearing this whistle. And I opened the door, and the Toyo stove, which is a heating unit, was backfiring. Backfiring is like a crappy car, it makes that sound. And I was like, oh my gosh, no. And I run to it and I hit the power button. And the moment I did that, the house exploded. What you see in this picture is caught on the security camera of literally the explosion coming out from underneath the house. It was insane. The whole house lifted a foot and shifted. Insulation blew 50, 60 feet from the house. I'm getting the chills telling you about it, even though I've should be fine right now to tell it, but I haven't really told this story. So and I couldn't get out of the place immediately because the oxygen being sucked out, like compressed my whole body, like a dream when you're trying to run and you can't run. The lights are just like crashing down from the living room for the kitchen. Glass is flying everywhere and breaking. It was insane. And then I run for it, get out of the house, turn to my left, and I see the house is on fire. So obviously I call 911, and I didn't understand I understood what happened at that moment because I knew that the snow had fallen off of the roof and it had ripped the propane line open. So the basement of this tiny house was filling with propane, which is why when I walked in, I did not smell propane, but for some reason, it must have been sucking air with the Toyo stove from underneath. So that's why it was failing. So me hitting the power button created a short, which created the fuse for the explosion to happen. There's a lot of things that could have gone way worse. It filled with propane for about an hour and a half, could have been way longer, right? I guess you don't need to hear the whole freaking story, but I did actually just make a YouTube video yesterday about it, just to kind of work through this emotionally. Literally walked into the house, explained what happened. It's all there. I can just grab you the link. Actually, it's not public. I'll put it in the chat box in case you're curious. But so I was writing literally this story about how life has to change when this happened. Like the universe doesn't get more like smack with me than this, right? Like it had to get my attention.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was nuts. So you can see the quantity of snow, and it's literally twice that now. That was a month ago. So all that to say, we all have wake-up call moments in our life. I've had a lot of wake-up calls and I ignored them. I had to go through this wake-up call to really take it to the next level to drive change. And here's what I'll say about driving change. The Chew-Witzen method that I just told you about is a habit changing system. Changing habits is actually pretty hard. But if you can't change habits, you can't change behaviors. Behaviors are really freaking hard to change. I feel like my desire to go 1,000,000 miles per hour is inherent to my personality. Can that ever change? The reality is, yes, it can, but that's a behavior, not a habit. And so now I'm working on really hard. I don't have the answers to this. I have not figured it out and mastered it, but we are working on it, changing my behavior and also changing the behavior in the company so that we can have a slower, more joyful, less aggressive, pushy existence. So the experiment that we started with about a month ago, this happened February 13th, by the way, so this is already recent. We did this, everyone nominated ideas for ways we could get more deep work in our life. We then had everyone vote by emoji for what deep work project we wanted to pick off and try for a month. We selected no Slack and email on Wednesdays and turning that into a deep work day where you declare your deep work project. There is zero communication between the team, none, no Slack, no email, no meetings. You do your thing. You can talk to us after or the day before, right? And the debrief on how that went was amazing. Everybody loves it. I don't think we'll ever get rid of it. It has been transformational, right? So at first, people were like, it felt alarming. It feels so quiet. Am I actually at work on a Sunday? Am I missing something? And it just, I love the way Crystal put it. She said it was life-giving. I felt like I was able to tackle a lot more. And Crystal manages my inbox. And for that too, I said, leave it. People don't need my email every day. It doesn't matter. Deal with it Thursday, right? So if anyone is looking for experiments, I recommend you think about experiments in your life, one at a time, and experiments in your business. And this one's working well if you want to copy it. Deep Work Wednesday. All right. I think I already made my point on behavior changing is really hard. But when we reflect on our shadow tendencies, right? Like I know what my shadows are very intimately right now. I'm impatient. I overdo it. I rush. But now that I know what that little shadow is behind me, I can really work on it. And it's important that we know our shadow so that we can counteract it. And I do believe that it's important to ask those that are most close to you to hold you accountable. I've had people in my life that are in my inner circle that know I'm working on change that say, hey, Meredith, slow down. You don't need to be in a rush for just little simple things. And it's making a big difference to have those accountability buddies. And I definitely recommend it. Okay, that was a lot. So we learned about the Chew-Witzen system for personal habit and wellness building. You learned about checklists and procedures for business, and you're now all pumped and obsessed about building those. We had a weekly sync tour. And what else? Deep work experiment has been really fun. The idea is to work smart, not harder. I appreciate, Hannah, what you just said, that it's an experiment and it gives us the permission to try all those things. And that's how the habit building system works as well, which is that you don't have to just decide you're going to do something today and then beat yourself up because it doesn't stick. We should just find our way into the right routines that we love doing, because if you love doing them, you'll stick with them. If we try to force it, we won't stick with it, right? I love Deep Work Wednesday. I can stick with that, right? All right, that pretty much wraps us up. Just if you're wondering, what does this wild child do anyway? Just wanted to kind of close the loop on that. So our zone of genius, this is Alex, my co-founder on the left. So we help people that want to build careers in grant writing. There's actually several on the phone. Carissa, Becca, giving you guys a shout out. Thanks for coming today. They're absolutely crushing it and achieving their life goals. Not having any prior experience is fine, but learning how to build this lifestyle that I'm talking about. What motivates Alex and I is sharing our knowledge generously, weaving social impact into our fabric. We should all do that from day one. Inspiring other women to chase their dreams, and knowing that you're having success fuels us. So if you know someone that might want to become a grant writing unicorn, we'd love it if you'd send them our way. Emails info@sendworks.org. You can find us on Instagram @LearnGrantWriting. We have a bunch of stories, which are kind of fun. Or I'm @Meredith Noble. And then there's the website, quite easy, learngrantwriting.org. I think that's my last slide. So there we have it. Shall we? Yeah, that was a lot. I've never ever given that presentation before because it's obviously all new. So
well, thanks for climaxing there with explosions, literally.
I know, right? Yeah,
that's intense.
There's going to be triggering activities here. So I should have warned you.
Wow. Well, I didn't know this. I'm so happy you're okay.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
Okay. So then I like the metaphor of what are the little alarms and the little bells that we're ignoring all the time that can easily be fixed. And while mine does not compare to an explosion, what I did notice was I went through in detail what it took for me to publish an actual podcast episode. And I realized that about 60% of the things that we were doing were just irrelevant. And this is gaining like 3 hours of my week back.
Yep.
And I was like, "Ooh, this is interesting." But if anybody has any questions, please feel free to turn on their camera and unmute themselves. I do have a couple. I'm really interested. The one big thing for me was taking away this keystone habit. Yes. I want to know, can you have more than one?
Do you think you have more than one?
Like, yes, because I said CrossFit. Is it like, that's the one thing that I know that if I go to CrossFit or do some sort of exercise, but it's not the only thing. Like a really good night's sleep is obviously the foundation for everything.
Is it your personal keystone though? Because it sounds like you probably get a good night's sleep on the whole, right? Like that's not the thing you have to like put some effort in. Maybe not. You've got kids.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I have the Aura ring, right? So it tracks my sleep. And I think my average sleep is probably like 80 something, which is good.
Do you feel like you have to kind of like, it comes easy? Like it's the keystone habit is the one that you maybe have to kind of sometimes talk yourself into going to do when you maybe don't want to do.
Oh, that's totally CrossFit. Okay. Yeah, awesome.
So that's your keystone.
And then one question I have is how often do you add or take away from your habits list?
About twice a year.
Oh, okay.
I've noticed, so I don't do it that often because obviously you want to be able to kind of compare month-to-month data equally, right? And so I also have them pretty dialed on what I care about. I'm now only swapping out a few at a time. I swap out the ones that I have locked in, I've achieved, and I'm doing every single time, no matter what, with something I want to build towards, like a new habit I want to add on. So for instance, making my bed, you wouldn't see that on there anymore because I make my bed every morning, no matter what. Mm-hmm. So I don't need to give myself the bonus point for that. I need to add on a new, harder habit. And the habits that I really struggle with doing, sometimes I'll say, I'll give myself 2 points for it. Like I'll put parentheses 2x because I really want to incentivize myself to do the thing, which is for me, a 10-minute meditation and the creative writing. Those are the ones I'd like to add that I can get 2 points because I'm not being consistent and I'm not getting it done. So I need to strengthen the incentive to start getting that habit built into my life.
Okay. I love that.
But I think the biggest thing is when you start doing this first, it changes a lot because you're figuring it out. So it might change every month and that's okay until you get it to where you're like, I'm happy with these are rad.
Okay. No, that's great. And actually, I'm just going to drop a little promo for my morning practice planner that's supposed to be coming out in the spring. Yes, fingers crossed. We're talking about this beforehand. And part of the practice of this planner is learning about your repeatable morning actions. And I say there's 10. 10 is a good number for repeatable morning actions. And that means like these are the things that are non-negotiable you do when you first wake up before anything else happens. And they're custom to you. So
that actually segues well into Chris's question, which is how much time do you spend on your morning and evening routines? I'm curious your answer, Renee, because I have mine. How long is your morning routine?
2 hours.
Mine's 2 hours too.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it's 2 hours. And I used to feel all this guilt. By the time I got to the end of it, I'd be like, you really got to get going. Your day is going to start. And I'd start feeling angsty.
Yeah.
And I've since learned just start the day at 7. your routine at 7, I can go to work and start at 9. And if I give myself that 2 hours, it's game changing.
Yeah, no, mine's 5 a.m. And if I start any later than like 5:30, that it just throws the whole day off. It's like off kilter. And like, I'm like, mom, I'm like, you're just having Cheerios for breakfast today to my kids because they don't have the time.
How about evening routine? How strong is your evening routine?
It's pretty good. And we've always been really good because I have kids, and it's just like, we have like alarms set on our phone in terms of like when electronics go off, when you can have your last snack, and like when it's bedtime. So everything pretty much starts right after we eat dinner. There's like every hour, there's like a consistent thing that needs.
This is like the difference between an Alaska lifestyle. So daylight's coming back. We can go play until 8 o'clock. So you're not home making dinner till 9. Like, it can be so easy to stay. I mean, in the sun and in the dead of summer, like you might be hiking until 11 o'clock at night.
That's so cool.
So it can be a little hard to do an evening routine. So I'm curious, in the chat box, does everyone have a morning and evening routine, and how long is yours? And Carissa, I love that you just woke up and rolled in. Is that why your camera's off? Because you got some bedhead?
Good morning, Carissa. Do you want me to send you some coffee? Yeah. We don't judge. I don't care what you look like. I actually tried and put on some makeup today.
I know, good for you. Yeah, but
I feel like my morning routine has also changed over time. It's changed based on my business evolution, about having a family, travel. Like, I feel most on top of the world when I don't have a checklist because it's so habitual what I do. But if I don't do it, then I feel off for like a day or two.
But I will say that for others, my morning checklist is still not entirely dialed, especially because I'm doing a lot of living out of a suitcase, it feels like.
Yeah.
And so I did build mine out in a checklist, and I go back to it. And sometimes I want to change the order, and I'm like, no, go down the order until it becomes solidified. And I don't have an evening checklist. And that's something that I'll hold myself accountable to from this call to actually go build.
Okay, you do that.
Hey, Michaela. It's nice to see you. Hello.
Yeah, hi. Was brave and jumped in here.
Do it.
I do have a question for you.
Please.
I love the trend line. When you showed the visual of that, it clicked to really see the big picture. My question is, on the day-to-day basis, or 4 or 5 days out of the week, when you are scoring yourself on this checklist, how do you avoid the feelings of negativity on the lower scoring days?
It's a great question, because this whole system is built for the self-critical. And so I will tell you that I don't feel bad at all. And I tend to be more gravitated towards using the system when I know I am in a low point mode of operation, because that's when I most need it to get back on track. So there have been periods of my life where I stopped using the point system for a couple months, and things start slowly deteriorating. And when I know that I need a personal reset, the first thing I do is put the Chew-Witzen method back into play. And so it's almost better for those days, because I don't want to just pick up the 4 to 5 days of the week that I was a superstar performer, because then that's really throwing the trend data off, right? So I think on the whole, it kind of just sticks for me to use it Monday through Friday, and I'm gentler with the weekends, right? Like, I don't expect myself to do my 10 minutes of yoga on the weekend. I just am like, not being trying to be so perfect about every single day. You just have to let that go.
Yeah.
So I think, is there a fear you have around, like, you're going to beat yourself up with having really low points? I think the whole point is that you don't, like, it's okay, because it's just one little moment. It's not the whole picture.
Yes. And that's why it was so helpful that you showed the visual of the trend line, because I get it on the big picture. I think that's the one hesitation that I have, is knowing the tendency to want to do everything every day.
Right. When they're actually in conflict. You can't have a rest day. Have a workout day.
That's
even though both are equally valid. That is the problem, is that sometimes they're literally in conflict to do all the things.
I think that's key. And I didn't catch that or think about it that way when seeing the checklist. But I think the key of having both those, like, aggressive, even physically, training for something goals plus the rest day. If you have goals that are in conflict with one another, that's a good thing, and it balances out. So
100%.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. Jacqueline, did you have any questions?
Hi, Meredith. Thank you for
Hey.
your teachings. I've been happily nodding along and loving what you're sharing about deep work and deep work Wednesdays. I've newly transitioned into that on a Thursday and have seen just profound improvements. Just in an accountability group I've been on with Renee and some kind of offshoot ideas that have come up, but shifting, productivity to a Thursday and having that be a deep work, I definitely am taking something away from that, in that I'm going to implement amongst our team the no emailing and the no Slack. Like I've personally been doing that on my Thursdays and kind of took a work from home day as visionary and kind of owner, and I'm going to implement that for our team.
Sweet. You'll love it. They're going to love it too. It's going to feel really, really good.
Yeah, I'm observing that that'll be beneficial for them. So thanks for sharing your lived experience in that. And then I've been thinking, my line of questions are more on the side of standard operating procedures.
Sure.
I've been working on that with our team, and Renee's been kind of watching me have that as a goal and building that out with our GM. And I loved what you said, because a similar process for us, and I've been observing where to not over engineer the business and where to not create SOPs, because it's where our growth trajectory through pandemic has been pretty steep. So it would be a waste of time for me to be creating processes that I know aren't going to change. So I had a question around, when you are in a growth chapter in a business and you're creating your SOPs, what are some that, for operating, you're making sure, okay, these are my key kind of SOPs that for sure always go kind of in flow with the throughput of, an operation, and then what's additional that's a nice to have almost. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm thinking, so what SOPs do you have right now?
Great question. So anything in relation to kind of the core operating of our business. So for shipping, receiving, things like that, like standard operating tasks, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So here's what I'll say about that. So sometimes I have to catch Alice because she loves systems and she'll want to build out something that I'm like, okay, we're going to do it like three times a year. We probably don't need to have a playbook for it. But the expectation is that through the growth, the SOP is always getting changed. Mm-hmm. So the rule is SOP remains open. If there's an SOP, it's open, even if you think you have all the steps memorized, because that's where little micro mistakes are happening, is people were getting too confident thinking they had it. And then I was seeing mistakes and not super happy about it. So I look to like what the plays are that people are responsible to, and go see, like, are they actually adding and making it better? Like, it is a cultural expectation that comes up in almost every weekly sync. Like, here's one that was optimized. Here's a new playbook. So if you make that a cultural expectation,
love that.
It will really radically change, because then they get modified as you're going and as things improve.
So we do that here. Like anytime that, like you said, is if you're working on a task that has an SOP, it's mandatory that it's to be opened and you're following the steps, because over time, the person that's responsible for that task will find ways to improve it.
Yep.
And that means that they need to optimize the SOP as well. We have and I need to change the name of this, but it's called the hit by the bus syndrome. It's like, hey, if you don't come to work tomorrow and someone has to take over your tasks, is there an SOP for your role? Like, what are the daily activities? What's on the docket? Because it happens. People get sick. Stuff happens.
Yep.
And then it just makes your business run smoother too. And then if you ever go to sell it, well, it's like, you already have your SOPs done. Boom. Now I got to work on the finances.
Yeah. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. I have been in and out of the business for the last 6 months, particularly after this gas leak explosion. I took 2 weeks to just be very lightly involved because I needed some me time, and the business did not slow down 1 ounce. Everybody ran super, super well, super smoothly. That is largely thanks to a playbook.
Yes. Okay. So speaking of playbooks, we definitely need to wrap this one up, because I have a recording for
in 4 minutes.
I know. So and the topic's actually really good. It's how to break through visibility blocks. So boom, that's coming out in a couple weeks. So if you want to connect with Meredith, She sent all of that. She shared the slide with all the contact information. She's awesome. And anybody else have any questions, feel free to email me, Renee@wewildwomen.com. I'm going to send a follow-up email at some point today as well. That'll include a lot of these links and stuff. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. And I really hope you got a lot from this. I certainly did.
Thank you.
Good times. All right. Thanks, everybody. Catch you later.
Okay. Happy Wednesday. Go do some deep work. Bye, guys.
Bye.